Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Headlines today. A major review of hospital food in England is announced by the Health Secretary following the deaths of 5 patients who contracted listeria.
The British government blames Iran for attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman, warning it's posing a serious danger to the region.
Flooded for 48 hours. This is the scene. The latest we'll show you this morning. The operation to help.
Glasses in one hand, raincoats and umbrellas in the other.
Good morning. It's Saturday, the 15th of June. Our top story this morning. A comprehensive review of hospital food in England has been announced by the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, in response to the deaths of 5 patients who contracted listeria.
7 NHS trusts have been affected by the outbreak, which has been linked to pre-packed sandwiches and salads. Simon Jones has more.
With 9 confirmed cases of listeria in hospital patients, resulting in 5 deaths, the Health Secretary wants to know what's gone wrong. 2 people lost their lives at the Manchester Royal Infirmary, 1 at Aintree Hospital. It's not been revealed where the other 2 patients died. In a statement, the Health Secretary said, "I have been incredibly concerned by this issue and strongly believe that we need a radical new approach to the food that is served in our NHS." Here at the Department of Health, Matt Hancock was facing growing calls to act. Labour now want him to make an urgent statement to the Commons on Monday to outline what exactly is being done. They say hospital patients and staff alike need reassurance. 43 NHS trusts had been supplied sandwiches and salads from a company called the Good Food Chain, which has been linked to the outbreak. It got its sandwich fillings from North Country cooked meats. It's here that a strain of listeria has been identified. Both have halted production. The first patient affected showed symptoms on the 25th of April. Suspect sandwiches and salads were withdrawn on the 25th of May. Public Health England first warned about the outbreak on the 7th of June. Listeria typically causes mild food poisoning, but can prove fatal if people are already seriously ill.
We've issued guidelines for many years now, and so has the Food Standards Agency as well, which has done a lot of work on this, advising that sandwiches and chilled foods generally should not be served to certain types of patient who are vulnerable to listeria.
As investigations continue, Public Health England insists any risk to the public remains low. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Iran is almost certainly responsible for the attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. This according to the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt.
The crews of both vessels had to abandon ship after they were hit by explosions on Thursday. Tehran has denied any involvement. The UN Secretary-General is now demanding an independent investigation. Let's go now to our correspondent Mark Lone, who's in the United Arab Emirates, near to where the incident took place. Mark, morning to you. I mean, the real danger here, as politicians get involved, is a danger of escalation, of course. And, you know, the incident itself, there's a limit to what we know about what happened.
Yeah, at the moment, Charlie, it is really the word of one side against the other. On the one hand, you have the US, which is standing very firmly behind its allies, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. President Trump saying that this has Iran written all over it. They say that the footage that was released shows an Iranian patrol craft removing an unexploded limpet mine from one of the 2 ships that was attacked on Thursday in the Strait of Hormuz, close to here, and that proves Iran's complicity. On the other side, you have Iran, backed by its allies, Russia, Turkey, saying that this is warmongering, this is a false flag operation to try to stoke tension in the region. They have raised the idea that this could have been some kind of proxy group or some other actor trying to foment tension here. So you have both of these sides with their conflicting claim and counterclaim. And meanwhile, we wait for one of those 2 stricken ships, the Japanese-owned ship, to come here to Fujairah, where it will be assessed and for some light to be shed on what happened. Now, the US is also blaming Iran for a surface-to-air missile, which it says hit an American drone in the region on Thursday, and that they say is further proof that Iran was behind this. Why would Iran have done this? If they did it, possibly to disrupt world oil markets, to show that they can still do that despite crippling US sanctions on the Iranian oil industry. Possibly it was the hardline elements of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to try to stop any kind of mediation attempts between Iran and the US. We simply don't know. But all the while the tension is ratcheted up, so are oil prices, which continue to rise. A fifth of the world's crude oil, Charlie, passes through these waters.
Mark, thanks very much. That's Mark Lowen reporting for us from the United Arab Emirates.
2 teenagers have been killed in London in separate attacks within minutes of each other. Police are investigating after one was stabbed in Wandsworth in South London shortly before 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and another was shot in Plumstead in southeast London. Police have made arrests in connection with each death.
Thousands of people, including the rapper Stormzy, joined a silent march last night to remember the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire. The event was held to mark the second anniversary of the disaster, which killed 72 people. But the Bishop of Kensington told a memorial service it was a national shame that flammable cladding remained in place on more than 200 high-rise buildings in England.
The World Health Organization says it is deeply concerned about an outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is already the second worst in history. The international health body is working with neighbouring countries to prepare for any possible spread of the disease, but says the response on the ground remains overstretched and underfunded.
Homophobic and transphobic attacks, including harassment, stalking and physical assault, have more than doubled since 2014. That's according to Home Office statistics. The new analysis comes after a number of high-profile attacks, including 2 women who were targeted on a bus in Camden. Reports of LGBT hate crime have increased by more than 140% in England and Wales in the last 5 years.
Now, in the last hour or so, Hong Kong's chief executive has suspended controversial extradition laws that led to massive demonstrations and violence. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to protest against the proposal. Well, at a news conference, Carrie Lam said that her priority is to restore peace and order.
The company that owns the exam board, Edexcel, say they found a serious breach of correct practice while investigating how part of an A-level maths paper was leaked online.
The questions were shared on social media ahead of yesterday's exam, and the full paper was offered for sale. Josh Parry reports.
Burly blacked out images of 2 questions from Edexcel's Maths Paper 3 exam were first posted on Twitter on Thursday afternoon and quickly spread. In a since deleted post, the user urged students to get in touch, offering the whole paper for £70. Pearson, the company behind Edexcel, says they've identified an exam centre in serious breach of correct practice and said they were determined to identify the individual involved and hold them to account. The leak has sparked fury amongst pupils, with hundreds signing a petition calling for justice. It's the 3rd year in a row that A-level maths questions from the Edexcel papers have been leaked. Pearson has also tried to reassure students that no one will be advantaged or disadvantaged and says the paper will not have to be resat. Josh Parry, BBC News.
People forced to leave their homes after the River Steeping in Lincolnshire burst its banks are waiting to hear when they can return.
A state of emergency was declared in Wainfleet on Thursday after the equivalent of 2 months' rain fell in just 2 days, and it caused more than 70 properties to be evacuated. We can talk to our reporter Michael Cohen, who joins us now. Michael, I mean, it's plain to see what the people there are dealing with in terms of the flooding. What's happening?
Morning, Maggie. Yes, it is. I mean, if you look here, these roads are literally turned into lakes now. Residents told me about 30 homes in this area, you can see, have all been evacuated. And although there was optimism from residents that the waters were receding this morning, we've just heard in the last minute or two that there are plans to evacuate even more homes from this area. So it seems that they are not out of the danger zone yet. That's in addition to the homes. About 170 homes have already been evacuated, and 100 of those are confirmed to have been flooded. Now, last night, there was optimism. They thought that they had plugged the gap with the help of the RAF and some Chinook helicopters. They put 270 tons of sandbags to plug that gap where the River Steeping had flooded. But now we've just heard that news that more homes are going to be evacuated here, which will make residents ask questions about when the ones who've already been evacuated can get back into their homes, because there is no news on that yet. We know that just streets away from here, they haven't started on this bit yet, but a couple of streets away there are fire trucks feverishly pumping water out of people's homes and out of the streets. We've heard about the resilience of the community today. We've heard about the community spirit, the fish shop opening just to serve volunteers. We've heard about that spirit of the community, but this news will be very upsetting to local residents in what is already a devastating situation for hundreds of people in this very close local community.
And what are you hearing from the local community in terms of how much help they feel they are getting while this situation exists?
The people we've spoken to have been very, very positive. In fact, residents have been coming out of this street all morning and going, looks good, waters are receding. But then that might not be the case a few streets away. Obviously, we're based here and there is a large police cordon here to let the emergency services, the army, the Environment Agency get on with the work that they need to do to try and secure these people's homes. So there was optimism, but now with this new announcement that more homes are going to be evacuated, it is likely to hit the community quite badly. It's been a really, really difficult few days here for people.
OK, Mark, thanks very much for bringing us up to date there and letting us know what's going on there. Mark Cohen in Wainfleet.
Let's see, time now is 11 minutes past 9.
6 candidates are still in the race to become the next Prime Minister, and we can expect to hear from them all in the coming days. On Sunday, Channel 4 is going to host a leadership debate. Boris Johnson said he will not participate. He has said, though, that he will take part in a similar event hosted by the BBC next Tuesday.
So that debate takes place after MPs have held a second round of voting and at least one more candidate has been knocked out. So let's talk about it all now, joined from Westminster by political journalist and broadcaster Michael Cockerell, and also by former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent. Gentlemen, very good morning to you this morning. Thank you for your time. I just wonder, Michael, if you pick up on these set pieces, if you call those, these debates that are going to be happening over the next few days. First of all, the Channel 4 debate, and it's unavoidable to mention it in the absence of Boris Johnson.
In the absence of Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson calculates that the less he's seen on television having difficult questions put to him for the time being, the better. Also, he argues that at the moment there are still the 6 candidates left in. A number of them may easily go out in the voting on Tuesday, and so that is a smaller number, and as he puts it, using his normal Greek word, it will be less of a cacophony. Kakos meaning bad, phonos meaning sound.
Oh, very good. Excellent.
And so that's the reason that he gives, but I think the real reason is that the less forensic questions he gets put to him, the better, because he's by far the front runner, so he needs to try and keep as low a profile as possible.
And John, for those people, sorry, John, I was just going to ask, for those people slightly bemused by the process that's happening next, so this is the Sunday night debate, and then there is another round of votes. Just talk us through that.
That's right, you see, so the whole thing is rather strange, but because, of course, the battle at the moment is for the hearts and minds of MPs. Therefore, appearing in public, to some extent, is genuinely a diversion. Because what Boris Johnson and the other candidates ought to be doing is working this place and making sure that they've had one-to-one meetings with as many people as possible, and frankly hinted that they might get a job if he becomes Prime Minister. So that's going on, that's the real battle that's going on, and the television public debates could have an effect, and certainly a lot of people are now saying, oh, well, is Boris Johnson frightened? No, he's being disciplined, because the other point is this, he needs momentum. He needs to make sure that in the second round, not only are one, perhaps 2 of the other candidates going to be removed, but also he wants to increase the number of people who are voting for him. So that's why it's so critical. These first few days, absolutely vital in terms of affecting the final result.
And Michael,
Also,
with your experience, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to leadership elections, which John and I have covered, and in 1975, when Mrs. Thatcher was standing for the leadership against Ted Heath, and in the second round there were 4 men against her and just herself, and she decided to pull out of something that she'd agreed to appear in on Panorama, the programme I was then working on, because she thought that four men squabbling was a much better image for her as the lady who was above it all.
Yeah, sorry,
I think
John,
the critical
carry on.
thing also, the critical point will be to what extent, particularly this debate on Tuesday with the BBC saying they're interested in policy. Now, that really means give us the exact detail of how you're going to produce a perfect Brexit or a good Brexit in the time available. Now, those are precisely the areas where all the candidates are worried and not terribly convincing. And the public increasingly are thinking, well, wait a moment, do we trust these people? Do we trust Boris Johnson, who said during the referendum campaign or implied that this was going to be quite easy? We all now realise it's going to be quite difficult. So how you explain what you're going to do between now and October the 31st, which is the deadline date, well, that's the tricky bit.
Can I ask you, Michael, in terms of your experience and what you're seeing now, about the tone of what these candidates are saying about each other? I mean, always we hear this sort of lip service, which is, I'm talking about my campaign, I'm not going to denigrate someone else. Do you think we're going to get to a point soon where those rules will stop applying? It'll change?
I think inevitably, and it always happens in these kind of campaigns. I was quite amused by Boris's interview on the World at One yesterday, where he said we don't want any blue-on-blue action, meaning Conservatives attacking Conservatives. They've been doing nothing but that ever since this leadership campaign started, and probably for the last 3 years over the whole Brexit matter, blue on blue. Often the blue on blue is hidden blue on blue because it is their aides or whisperers or bad special advisors who badmouth their opponents, but it's attributed to the camp rather than to the individual who's actually standing.
But also you get the marvellous moments. Jeremy Hunt was saying, this is a serious moment, it needs a serious person,
yes.
Implying there's one person called Boris, but I'm not going to say his name, who's not totally serious. So they're speaking, as Michael says, in code half the time. But the actual real problem they've got is, what if you get to the stage where Boris looks as if he's going to just soar away? Do the other candidates simply say, well, I don't gain very much by staying in the contest? Now, the organisers may say, oh, no, you must stay in the contest because we want a real debate. But you say, OK, well, it's fine for you to say that, but it doesn't help my career, it doesn't help the Conservative Party. And at that point, as happened last time with Theresa May, when she was elected unopposed in the final test, so it didn't go to the membership. So we were being told all along we mustn't do that again because Theresa May's problem was that she wasn't questioned enough. People didn't realise that how weak she was really as someone to debate and make her points
and as a
persuade as a campaigner. So they were all saying now we must learn from that. So this time we must have a proper contest. Well, that's all very well to say it, but what if the individual candidates simply say, like Matt Hancock, I don't think this is for me, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait. Well, he wasn't bottom, he wasn't the lowest one, Rory Stewart was, but it helps Rory Stewart because he wants to continue with the discussion. He genuinely does want to continue with the discussion.
Gentlemen, it's really interesting. I'm sorry, John, it's really interesting hearing your thoughts with all the experience you have in the past. We will see how things unfold over the next few days and weeks. Thank you both very much, Michael and John.
Well.
Thank you.
Lots to watch unfold. 18 minutes past 9. Let's talk to Tomasz, find out what's happening with the weather. Morning.
Good morning to you and to you at home. Not much change on the weather front really for this weekend. It's going to stay cool, showery, quite breezy tomorrow as well. The low pressure that's been plaguing our part of the world for quite some time now is still very much with us. It's sort of swirling around pretty much in the same place and just keeps throwing new weather fronts at us. Here's a new one. There's the rain from earlier this morning. This is the radar. You can see it's been raining across eastern parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, some rain showers in the southwest and Wales. And this weather front will be moving in an easterly direction over the coming hours. So at the moment, many areas are actually waking up to some clear blue skies, but the clouds will be building through the morning into the afternoon. And many of us, at least at some point, will need our brollies or raincoats because the showers are on their way. Now, the temperatures today are below par compared to what they should be this time of the year. We're used to it by now. 15 in Belfast, maybe scraping 18 or 19 in London. And then this evening, you can see the showers shift a little bit further towards eastern areas of the UK. So actually, the evening is looking drier and brighter out towards the west. And then by the end of the night, temperatures will have dropped to around 8 degrees in the north, 11 degrees in the south. And then Sunday, we do it pretty much all over again. So mixture of sun and showers thanks to this low pressure and these weather fronts marching in our direction. Fine weather to the south of us, but that low is still going to stick around for quite some time. So the forecast for Sunday then, if you're heading off to western and southern coasts, be prepared for a chilly breeze. It'll be blowing out of the southwest, dragging in clouds and some showers. Eastern areas probably less breezy there and still fairly cool. Temperatures typically around about 16, 17 degrees, maybe nudging up to around about 19 there in London. And little change as we head into Monday. I'm bored of saying this now. The low pressure's still with us and further showers on the way. Now, there is a hint as we head into next week that the first half of next week, probably until around about Wednesday, the weather isn't looking too bad at all. It looks like things will be drying up. In fact, by Monday already, temperatures nudging up to around 20 degrees across England. We might even hit the mid-20s, but on the whole, it looks as though things will start cooling off again from certainly Wednesday, Thursday, at least in some parts of the UK. So no real heat, nothing that I can really sink myself into in terms of the forecast for you for quite some time.
Thomas, thanks very much. 9:21 is the time now.
It's time to look at the papers. Nancy Fielder, editor of the Sheffield Star, is here to tell us what's caught her eye. Good morning, nice to see you again. You have taken a look at ancient woodlands being damaged by adults who are being big kids, I suppose.
This is, well, kind of. This is my favourite story of the day. So you would think it was children going off and causing damage by climbing trees.
Yeah.
This is a beauty spot, a really protected ancient woodland in Leicestershire. And actually, the people whose job it is to look after it are saying it's been damaged. They're finding several dens a week, and it's not children. They're saying we want children out playing. It's big grown men ripping down branches, damaging foot, and making proper survival.
For themselves, or is it kind of with their kids?
I mean, they find the evidence after because it's a massive woodland. It's the woodland that inspired David Attenborough when he was growing up. But I mean, the story, it's made by the quotes. There is no legitimate need to build a shelter. You're never more than a quarter of a mile from a car park. It also makes me worry slightly what they're drinking while they're there, because if Bear Grylls is the inspiration, we all know how far the survival fantasies. I
suppose if you have an ancient woodland, obviously your interest is to protect it. But the reason you want to protect it is so people can enjoy it. And those people who are going into those places are enjoying it. I mean, they may not be necessarily doing exactly what you want them to do, but they're there.
No, but the serious point is that they're seriously damaging it. And what they're saying, it's been there for centuries. You can't just magically grow a tree and it suddenly becomes hundreds of years old.
But den building is fun.
Den building is fun, but use a woodland that isn't ancient and things that have already fallen down, perhaps. I think it's the SAS extreme mentality that they're concerned about.
So
you're on the side of den building, eh?
Have we got a suspect?
Come on.
Well,
I don't think I've ever actually... I haven't cleared myself of that particular incident. I've never been to that ancient woodland and I'm not involved in that story.
But you have built a den.
But they're not putting you off building dens. They're saying that's a good thing.
Yes.
Just don't damage things while you're doing it.
Not in the wrong place.
Absolutely.
Madonna.
Madam X is the tour that's happening, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Madonna has come out saying Instagram makes people slaves. And although she's got millions of followers on Instagram, she says it makes people conform. It puts pressures on younger generations that her generation didn't face. And she's saying she wants people to go out there and be their own self. And I think Madonna's always said that. I mean, she was famous right from the beginning of her career for reinventing herself. But I do also think these pressures have always existed. I'm sure there were plenty of teenagers who grew up in the 80s and 90s who thought that Madonna was the person that you aspired to look like, to be. So it's different. I think the social media element does create greater pressures. And also, she mentions her daughter. I mean, she says to her daughter, be yourself. You don't need to be me, but imagine being Madonna's daughter. I mean, what do you do in life? The pressure. I'd suggest anything away from showbiz music.
You've got kids yourself.
I have.
So how does that play out in your house? The social media pressure and all that stuff.
So my eldest is 19, and she's been on social media and obsessed by social media for a long time. But it's just the way they communicate. I do think the pressures have always been there. It's just a different platform. It's not Smash Hits and Just 17 now. It's Instagram. And I think also it can be a real positive. I think it's very easy for us to knock social media and say it's terrible, but actually it's got an awful lot of good as well.
Would you like to pick one more story for us? So we've got time for one more. Which is your favourite you'd like to give us?
So my other favourite, I really like this one. A mother who teaches students how not to live in filth. Now this is schools, and one woman in particular has set up a uni cook and clean company, which is teaching students how to do really basic things like register for a doctor and how to make a salad. And part of me thinks...
How to make a salad?
Literally, how to make a salad and an omelette. Now, an omelette might be slightly more complicated than a salad, but do we really need this? And actually, I think we do. I think a lot of teenagers going to university don't know basic things like how to make a bed. But whose fault is that? Let's be honest. It's the parents who have let them get through 18 years without saying, come on, it's your time to hoover up.
Another on the list of things to be taught is, I think you mentioned it, how to successfully wrestle a cover onto a duvet.
Which is quite a challenge compared to another one, which is switching on a hoover, a vacuum.
Is that
That's on
really
it, yeah. Do we really need lessons in these things? Is this not part of parenting and growing up that we should encourage them to do a bit more, perhaps?
Yes. Thank you very much.
My kids are going to love me when I get home.
Well, I think at least your kids know how to make a salad. Nancy, good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
9:26 is the time now. We're on BBC One.
No, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say I don't understand it. Dishwasher. The whole point of a dishwasher is you put the dishes in and it cleans it.
Yeah,
and you don't have to wipe the plates before they go in the dishwasher.
No, but you have to stack it correctly. We've had this conversation before.
You're just having the final word, right?
Always. We've
Is
got
that you
Simon
cutting me
Rogan.
down?
Listen, we've got Simon Rogan here.
Hello, Simon Rogan.
Yeah, he's here.
How you doing?
They're all
Very
your
well,
buddies, aren't
very
they?
well.
Oh, yeah. How you doing down there?
We're very well. You should come down and see us sometime. I've got Tom with you.
Hi, Simon. How you doing?
Yeah, we were
today.
talking by text this morning, believe it or not.
Well, this is all very chummy. But Simon, do you want to wade in on the dishwasher? Do you want to wade in on the dishwasher? Sorry, Matt.
Tom was saying something.
Oh no, Tom was just saying that you were texting. You were at.
Yeah, we were together at Lyon for the Bocuse d'Or for the British team, giving them some support.
Nice.
It's great, amazing. Really
What a
good.
small world. But yeah, I'd like to know what Simon Rogan thinks. Top Chef thinks about stacking dishwashers.
Well, there we go.
We'll tell you later.
I have my 17-year-old son who's in charge of those duties, and I don't get involved.
Do you oversee the stacking and the unstacking?
I make sure the plates are clean, basically, before they go in. He's got a tendency just to chuck them in and hope the dishwasher does the job.
And I think what we've learned, because we're going to talk about this competition that you've been in, which Tom mentioned a little earlier, we're going to talk about that. But I think what we're all clear about is everyone's dishwasher, apart from Matt Tebbutt's, has no extraneous food particles in them. And they're stacked neatly. Matt, thanks very much. You enjoy your clean kitchen and, messy dishwasher. I'm going to talk to you.
And Simon didn't come in to talk about dishwashers, to be fair. We will talk about the competition. You're going to have a chat with us a little bit
Absolutely,
later.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Headlines are coming up. Hello, you're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchetti. Time now is 9:31.
Coming up before 10 o'clock, we'll have all the sport with Mike, of course. Thomas will have the weather for you as well.
Let's bring you a summary of this morning's main news. A comprehensive review of hospital food in England has been announced by the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, in response to the deaths of 5 patients who contracted listeria.
7 NHS trusts have been affected by the outbreak, which has been linked to pre-packed sandwiches and salads. Public Health England said the wider risk to the public remains low.
We've issued guidelines for many years now, and so has the Food Standards Agency as well, which has done a lot of work on this, advising that sandwiches and chilled foods generally should not be served to certain types of patient who are vulnerable to listeria.
Iran is almost certainly responsible for the attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. That's according to the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Yesterday, the US military released a video which it said showed Iranian forces removing an unexploded mine from one of the stricken ships. Tehran has denied any involvement. The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says there's no credible evidence Iran is responsible, tweeting that the UK should ease tensions rather than fuel a military escalation.
Two teenagers have been killed in London in separate attacks within minutes of each other. Police are investigating after one was stabbed in South London in Wandsworth shortly before 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and another was shot in Plumstead in south-east London. Police have made arrests in connection with each death.
In the last 2 hours, Hong Kong's chief executive has suspended controversial extradition laws that led to massive demonstrations and violence. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to protest against the proposal. At a news conference, Carrie Lam said that her priority was to restore peace and order.
The company which owns the exam board, Edexcel, says it's found a serious breach of correct practice while investigating how part of an A-level maths paper was leaked online. The questions were shared on social media ahead of yesterday's exam, and the full paper was offered for sale. Pearson said it was determined to identify the source of the breach. Edexcel A-level maths papers were also leaked in 2017 and 2018.
It's emerged this morning that more people will be evacuated from their homes in Lincolnshire after the River Steeping burst its banks for the second time this week.
A state of emergency was declared in Wainfleet on Thursday after the equivalent of 2 months' rain fell in just 2 days. Our reporter Michael Cohen is with us now. And Michael, bring us up to date with what's going on there. Obviously, the community there dealing with a lot of infrastructure problems now.
A lot of infrastructure problems. We've actually in the last few moments just seen rescue boats going out behind us to try and rescue any people who are still left, who haven't been evacuated from the streets behind me. As you can see, they're like a lake. But we've also heard in the last few moments, we've just had an official statement through that another part of the river now is showing signs of breaching, and residents in the north and west areas around Wainfleet are now going to be evacuated. They're calling for certain postcodes to self-evacuate to friends and family in safer areas. But this is a situation that many thought was coming to an end last night. They saw the river levels receding. They saw water in their streets going down. And now in other parts of the area, they are obviously seeing further disruption, which is going to come as a major blow to over 170 homes that have already been evacuated. And there's still no news on when people are going to be able to get back into their houses. Fire crews are still working to get water out of those homes that are already affected. But they don't know yet how the emergency services are going to be affected by this latest news that there are signs of another breach in the river.
Michael, thanks very much. Michael Cohen there for us from Wainfleet.
Time now is 9:35. Mike's got all the sport for us now. So it was two big matches, and we're looking at it, England and Scotland, and their fortunes have slightly divided at this point in the tournament.
Which is to send their seekers onto the pitch and catch the snitch from the snitch.
And I did ask earlier, because in J.K. Rowling's Quidditch, the snitch can go anywhere.
Yeah, and that used to be the case in the sport of Quidditch that's played now by Muggles. They used to be able to go, with, I think, 3 miles away from the pitch. And there were cases of snitches hiding, getting changed, coming back in costumes so they weren't recognised. But now, to make it more of a spectator sport, they have to stay on the pitch.
Within confines.
Within the confines of the pitch.
And may I ask you about your broomstick?
Yeah, well, they used to use wooden ones with brushes on, but as Jack was saying, they splintered. It could be dangerous. Now, they're very light, well, quite light, and it doesn't hurt so much if you fall on it.
Very good.
The drain pipe that they use now.
So do you have to hold it the whole time?
Has to be between your legs, yeah.
The whole time?
Yeah, unless you're the snitch. The only position in which you don't have a stick between your legs.
And it's all proven very popular.
Well, J.K. Rowling as well. She tweeted congratulations to the winning team the other year, and the finals will be in Salford at the AJ Bell Stadium come the end of August. See who's going to be the champions this time around.
Very good, Mike. Thank you very much.
Is it Quidditch weather for you wherever you are today? Well, Thomas will be able to tell you exactly that. Morning.
Good morning. Is it Quidditch weather? I mean, I don't really know what weather they like, do they? I mean, it's probably not raining is a start. I'll show you what's happening across Europe right now, the big picture. So we are pretty much, out of these major centres across Europe, the coolest place, apart from Reykjavik there in the north. Heat wave, big heat wave there across Europe right now. But France, the UK, northern parts of Spain, pretty chilly. Low pressure with us, lots of showers. You know the story by now. We've had this for quite some time. So no change really for the whole of the weekend. And if anything, tomorrow the breeze even picks up across western and southern areas. So there's going to be a little bit of a nip in the air if you're heading off to the to the promenades. So the low pressure with us, you can see it's pretty much in the same place. Normally what lows do, they form out in the Atlantic and they sort of move from west to east. But not this one. This one's pretty much stuck in the same place, and it just keeps forming new weather fronts which are sitting on top of the UK. Now this is the radar. Recently you can see it's been raining there in Belfast, but the rain's just starting to sort of fizzle out a little bit across the south and the southwest of the country, but showers are gathering. So showers are 1 hour you've got sunshine, the next minute you've got rain, and then back to sunshine again, so sort of changeable weather. So that's what we've got this afternoon. You can see where the showers are roughly during the afternoon across parts of the Midlands, northern England too, but also a lot of clear weather as well. So it's certainly not going to be raining all the time today. But some parts of the country so far this month have had anywhere between 200 and 300% of the normal rainfall that we get in June. Particularly it's around Lincolnshire and northern parts of Wales where we've had the heavy rain. Anyway, this is the forecast early on Sunday morning. You can see it's around 8 to 10 degrees. And then tomorrow the low is still here, so it's just sort of wobbling around really, a bit like a spinning top. And these weather fronts are circling around it, coming our way. So again, tomorrow, Sunday, it's same picture. Sunshine and showers. The morning might start off quite sunny across eastern areas, well then the breeze picks up and starts to push in those clouds and showers your way. And tomorrow's temperatures will probably be around the mid to high teens across northern areas, maybe squeezing out 20 degrees across East Anglia and the southeast. Now, if you want something a little bit warmer, the good news is there is something a little bit warmer heading our way. Nothing particularly warm, maybe around the mid-20s by the time we get to around Wednesday and Thursday across the south of the country. But on balance, there's no sign of any prolonged warmth or summer heat wave on the way. That's it. Back to you.
Oh, well, we'll get something sometime then. We'll get one.
Yeah, I mean,
day.
not everybody wants a heat wave. I mean, most people I don't think want a heat wave. So I guess good news. I don't know. I never know how to describe this weather, because whatever you say, you're never going to make anybody happy.
You're not going to please anyone, or very few. Tom Ash, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
9:49 is the time now. This weekend marks the 100th anniversary of one of the most important milestones in aviation history, the world's first non-stop transatlantic flight.
The journey by John Alcock and Arthur Brown lasted more than 16 hours. Phil Mackey reports on how the centenary has been.
The Rolls-Royce Eagle
They flew in a Vickers Vimy. This is one of only 3 still in existence. It's in the RAF Museum Reserve collection, where it's been disassembled like a giant model kit.
They'd flown many risky missions before. The chances of survival if things went wrong were pretty slim. Even if they survived crashing into the sea, really the North Atlantic will kill you very quickly through hypothermia.
But they were still willing to take it?
They were still willing to take the risk, yes.
To get a sense of just how difficult this journey was, you really have to look in the cockpit to see how cramped it was, kind of basic instruments, and think that Brown in the navigator's seat at one point during the journey had to climb out over here on top of the fuselage to clear ice off one of the gauges.
They couldn't have done it without this, the Rolls-Royce Eagle engine that propelled them across the Atlantic. One of the first things Alcock and Brown did was send a telegram to thank the company. And the engine will form the centrepiece of a new museum in its home city of Derby.
And we want to hear from people that are connected with the making of this object. You may have grandparents or parents that were involved in the design and manufacturing of this. And we want to tell those stories in our new museum.
Turboprop is an example from our early Vickers Viscounts.
Rolls-Royce engines still power transatlantic planes, but it was the Eagle which made the trip possible.
A lot of people still believed aviation wasn't here to stay as a new technology and wouldn't believe it could ever happen. Many people had not seen an aircraft even in 1919, and so it was very still new, but it showed that it was here to stay and it was reliable, which is very, very important.
In the century since they became the first to cross the Atlantic in less than a day, their bravery has continued to be honoured. Phil Mackey, BBC News.
Fascinating. It is fascinating.
It is 8 minutes to 10. Let's go to the largest, most prestigious cooking contest in the world. but it's one that not many people have even heard of. It's called the Bocuse d'Or.
It's held every 2 years and sees 24 teams of international chefs come together to create elaborate dishes in front of a live arena audience. Simon Rogan is the UK team president, and we'll be chatting in just a moment. I think we're going to get a sample of taster of what the chefs might expect. Have a look. It is fascinating.
It is 8 minutes to 10. Let's go to the largest, most prestigious cooking contest in the world. But it's one that not many people have even heard of. It's called the Bocuse d'Or.
It's held every 2 years and sees 24 teams of international chefs come together to create elaborate dishes in front of a live arena audience. Simon Rogan is the UK team president, and we'll be chatting in just a moment. I think we're going to get a sample of taster of what the chefs might expect. Have a look. So you were just explaining what those images are from. So people get a sense of the scale of the thing, apart from anything else.
Yeah, it's huge. It's in an arena. It's like a World Cup final, stroke Eurovision Song Contest, stroke MasterChef. I mean, that just about sums it up. But, you know, to have that sort of quality cooking going on in such a confined area, and then a bank of noise of teams, supporters from around the world, it's quite unlike anything you've ever seen.
A little bit more about the name. The Bocuse.
Bocuse d'Or, named after the legendary chef Paul Bocuse, who established the competition, who's suddenly just passed away. But it was established to some are actually sponsored by their governments, because obviously see winning the Bocuse d'Or is a massive thing for their country, for the patriotism of it, and for food tourism. So, you know, there's a definitely a have and have-nots. We aim to change that.
Never seen so many chefs in one place at one time, all wearing their chef's hats. Are you allowed discretion as to how tall your chef's hat is?
All has to be exactly the same.
They all have to look
exactly the same.
Because someone might be seeking to get more attention by having a...
Yeah, well, I was told that the Japanese have different hats because of their tradition or something, but I didn't actually see that. So as far as I'm aware, everyone is in the same uniform, same hat, and you know, it's a lot of pomp and ceremony, and it's a really, you know, behold to see, really.
You mentioned like the budgets and how that can influence who's successful and who's not. What about the trends that we've seen in food lately? You know, a move towards veganism, meat free, or, you know, more sustainable.